But Rachana, we wanted to know whether this marginal cost of funds as the input into base rate is a done deal. And if that comes, are we going to see faster rate cuts or rate hikes?
No, I don't think it's a done deal, because we have to understand that the deposit rates, we are fixed on the liability side, in the sense that when we take a deposit, we take it at a particular cost. And therefore, to reprice the entire asset base on the basis of marginal costing itself, it would be something that if we even think about doing about it, it will have to have a very long transitioning period. It can't happen tomorrow. And as Mr. Bhasin said, that this means that when the rates go down, the depositors will start getting much less. When the rates go up, the borrowers will have to pay much more. So how do you balance all of that out? It's something that we have to see. And in India, the things are a little different from the international financial system, mainly because Indian banks are mainly deposit based, in the sense that if you look at our bank, only 1% is market borrowing. The rest is basically long-term bonds or deposits. And the deposits is the lion's share of it. Even bonds is very little. So it is really based on long-term deposits. And again, the reason for that is in India, because of a lack of a social security net, the banking system actually has been working as a proxy for a social security net, with people putting their savings over there and then planning their retirement based on bank interest. So taking all of these considerations, these are the realities of the situation in India. We have to see how this can be worked out, or how we could transition towards something that is close to it. But it's not something that's about to happen tomorrow.
मैम, लेकिन सुबह गवर्नर साहब ने भी कहा कि जब रेट बढ़ते थे उस समय ट्रांजिशन बहुत फास्ट था, और हमारा भी एक्सपीरियंस है कि कई बार दोपहर में आरबीआई ने रेट हाइक की और शाम को ईएमआई बढ़ गई, लेकिन जब रेट घट रहे हैं तो ऐसा नहीं है। तो वही प्रिंसिपल इस पे लागू क्यों नहीं होता?
नहीं, इस पे इसलिए लागू नहीं होता है कि डिपॉजिटर्स के रेट्स भी हम लोग उसी तरह से बढ़ा कमा नहीं पाते हैं। और अगर ट्रांसमिशन की बात करते हैं तो 350 बेसिस पॉइंट जब आरबीआई रेट हाइक किया था, तब हम लोग कितना ईएमआई हाइक किए थे? 350 बेसिस पॉइंट किए थे। क्योंकि आप लोग को एक इंस्टेंस याद रहता है, लेकिन बाकी सारे इंस्टेंसेस भूल जाते हैं। हम आपको दिखा सकते हैं कितने रेट हाइक्स कितने बार हुए हैं, और बैंक्स ने ईएमआई का कुछ भी नहीं किया है। किया भी तो है लेकिन उतना नहीं किया है। तो ऐसा है कि वी ओनली डू व्हाट we believe the banking book can bear. As I told you, when the repo rates were hiked by 350 basis points in June or July of, I think, 2013, our rates didn't go up by that extent. So you have to understand, both ways. It takes a little time for the things to pass through. And it is not only the cost of deposits that determines this. The passing through is also determined by the amount of liquidity. It is also determined by the amount of credit demand. So, it is also competitiveness. That means when there is competition for something, that also drives rates up or down. So, there are very many factors, and repo is only one of the factors. This is also accepted in RBI in its own reports. In the Urjit Patel committee report, they have accepted that repo is not a very sharp tool, it's a blunt tool. And it is a blunt tool because for us, our resources, the amount of resources that we raise from market borrowing, short-term market borrowings, is as low as 1%. So you have to allow all of the other factors to also play into the economy. And as I said, things, because it is an easing cycle, we see it as an easing cycle. Internally, we are finding that we believe that the inflation will come down, and our inflation prognosis is lesser than what the central bank has given today. So given that, given the easing cycle, rates are definitely going to come down.
So now, while we've kept the rates at the current level, we've seen that deposit growth has fallen. So is there any structural issue here? So even while you're protecting your interest rate for the benefit of depositors, the deposit growth itself has fallen. So there seems to be a structural issue.
No, it's not really a structural issue. Deposit growth has fallen this year, mainly on the back of the fact that the capital markets have been doing very well. So I think that is one issue. The other thing is also you have to see what are the competing deposits. Now, if you look at PPF, if you look at this, the other scheme that the government has come for the young girls, if you look at the rates of interest that are being given over there, they are higher than the bank rates of interest. Not only that, those deposits also don't have any TDS. So, there are competing instruments which for the small savers, where the deposits are also going. So that is one issue. And as I said again, this year a lot of money has gone into the capital markets. So these things will move from time to time. And it is not a question of any structural issue, but a question of, competitiveness. And that is where, if the competitiveness is such that you are not able to get the kind of deposits that we're seeing earlier, so obviously it becomes a little difficult for us to tweak the rates down.
Ma'am, one question to all of you actually. Do you see a base rate cut in April? If yes, when? All of you.
I have taken so many, so they must take them.
No, I mean, I really directed it to everybody. Do you smell a rate cut in April? If yes, how much?
Perhaps I'm out of it. Having done it before.
Yes.
No, I think Aditya has been at pains to explain that a base rate cut is a function of the deposit cost. So if the deposit cost goes down, then there will be a base rate cut. If it doesn't go down, there won't be a base rate cut. I think she raised the point that even at this rate, we are not getting deposits. What will happen? So, but on the other hand, what she also said was that the trajectory is down, so a rate cut is coming. We unfortunately don't have the same intellect as you to predict the month.
Sir, in December you had said that in March specifically HDFC will look into cutting the rate.
Because the base rate formula changed, my friend. This is a dynamic world.
The RBI came in the way of cutting rates.
I never said that. That's what you said.
No, ma'am. Is there April is the slack season for credit?
No.
Is there a rate cut in the offing?
RBI did not come, and what they came in with is a valid statement. They said that the bucket that you have to take into account should be where you get meaningful deposits. So you can have your interpretation. My mind doesn't work that way.
I'm just asking a very simple question.
I'm
Are you
giving
expecting a
simple
cut
answer, no letter.
in April? If yes, how much?
I'm answering simplistically. If my cost goes down, there will be a cut by the amount that the cost goes down, which I'm unable to specify at this point because we haven't gone to the first step of reducing deposit rates. So first we will reduce deposit rates, then we will calculate the base rate, then we will...
So to be fair, deposits have been falling for the system since the past 6 months at least. I remember the first cuts starting to get announced since October.
I think you raised actually three things. One is, when do the rates come down in general? The second is what's happening to deposits. And then the third is, will the base rate therefore come down? I think all of us have explained, and we've said this every time when the policy is announced, even when the monetary policy rates are announced upwards or downwards, that it's not just the repo rate cut that determines, or the repo rate change that determines a base rate change. It depends on the cost of funds, it depends on your deposit mix, it depends on the liquidity situation, and it depends on the credit offtake. And I think that approach or answer remains constant, whichever way the repo rates are announced. Secondly, I think even on deposits, while you've said that the deposit growth has been slower, but let me tell you, the retail deposit growth has not been slower. So, even today, it's actually, it sounds like a worrying factor that has savings rates for the economy come down and have deposit growth rates come down. If you look at the breakup of the deposit growth rate, on the retail side, household savings, in the deposit side, financial savings, the rate is as high as what it used to be in the past. The government savings are as high. It's actually the private sector companies' savings rates that have gone down. So which genuinely means there's a little lack of liquidity in the entire private sector. So the interest rates on deposits per se for the retail customer have continued to remain fair, and actually investors are investing in the retail fixed deposits. Finally, of course, what do you see the trend on base rates? I think clearly, as you saw, some amount of deposit rate cuts started since November. It is, the whole cycle is easing, and you would see rates coming down. I think beyond that, it's unfair to say which date in April and how many basis points. I think that let all the ALCOs meet and decide. But it is an easing interest rate scenario.
I think the question is, there has got to be a lag, as all of you have been explaining to us. But how long is that lag actually? I mean, if you started 6 months back.
अभी हिंदी में समझाते हैं.
Please.
वो lag is a function of cost of funds. Deposit rate नवंबर से घट रहे हैं. अब थोड़ा और घटेंगे. जब वो घट जाएंगे तो cost of funds नीचे हो जाएगी. Cost of funds नीचे हो जाएगी within 1 quarter as per RBI regulations of the there you have to cut your base rate. So somewhere between now and June, if the banking system, which has not at the moment largely reduced interest rates, अगर वो interest rate घटाता है, तो अब और जून के बीच में जरूर कुछ घट आएगा. अब आप पूछेंगे कितना? जितना cost घटेगा. ठीक है?
Impact the base rate and impact banks? What could be?
I think you have to read the RBI statement very carefully. The RBI statement says we will encourage the use of the marginal rate. The reason that they have said that is, as Arundhati said, that there are structural issues in the Indian financial market. You normally use a marginal rate of cost of funds when there is sufficient liquidity available at that rate to fund a reasonable proportion of your portfolio so that your cost is also affected. If the system in here is that we don't have a major debt market and we don't have a major CP market and the funding of the banks is not from the money market, obviously we will move towards that, but it will not move instantly. So it will be a little premature to say how that will affect, but it is the right way to go, both in terms of market development. So it will have to be carefully calibrated to ensure that the transmission comes through in a manner that's fair to all parties concerned, banks included.
So there was
Any
also
other
a statement
announcements?
made, Lata, one second. There was another statement made of linking of small savings rate to the GSEC. How do you think that would impact deposits or the entire savings scenario?
No, see, that's the other point. I think each of one have been stating that. If you see the small saving rates, they actually put a floor as to where deposit rates can go. If you then link it to GSEC, depends upon the maturity that you will link it to GSEC to. And if you link it to a shorter maturity than 10 years, it's likely to come down. If it comes down, bank deposits can also have the space to come down.
What is the average maturity of banks in Germany?
Every bank will have different.
Any other announcements?
Every bank will have different.
Ma'am, any other takeaways, Mrs. Arundhati Bhattacharya, from the policy? Did the governor discuss the NPL position? Did he say that the RBI will be open to a little more SOPs for restructuring because the economy is under stress? Anything other than rates discussed?
No, I don't think there was any other discussion other than the monetary policy. Of course, he did call for comments from the bankers. And some of the bankers, we have flagged a few other concerns that we have. There was nothing else.
What concerns were flagged?
Some things, for instance, we did talk about the LCR. And on the LCR, we did request that given the fact that we already have high CRR and SLR, whether the LCR could be added over and above that, or whether, the SLR itself could be considered as part of the instruments, the HQLA, the high quality liquid assets, whether it could be considered as part of that. So stuff like that, and the individual other issues that needed clarification, very many were flagged. But there was no specific comments on, or from the RBI side on NPL side. Of course he did, and he said the reason is that there is a feeling that there will be enormous liquidity that will kick into the market on account of the fact that the government spending is due to go up. Also the fact that they have been sterilizing quite a lot of the dollars, so that adds to liquidity in the market. So considering these two sources which might be bringing in further liquidity, they felt that a CRR cut at this point of time may add too much to the liquidity.
Ma'am, just wanted to
understand on cost of funds. I remember SBI's December figure, month on month, there was only 1 basis point change as far as cost of funds is concerned. From that point of time, has cost of funds gone down? Because RBI governor said that he does not believe if banks are saying that, cost of funds has not come down.
No, because, we'll have to work that out. I don't really have the numbers, but you do know that we had started reducing the cost of deposits from October. So obviously a part of it will have kicked in. But again, one thing that we have seen in the recent past, because of the anticipated fall in rates, people have moved much of their deposits into the higher brackets. So they have locked in on higher costs. So that might be skewing it a little. But overall, I think, over the period of time, it will start repricing itself, and we will be seeing some amount of traction on that. Again, as I said, if there is a growth on the volumes of credit itself, that also takes care of these things. And there are many other smaller issues that we can consider, in order to take up whatever slack is created on account of the reduction of the cost of borrowing. So all of that will be taken into consideration. I think most of us will be having ALCOs somewhere during this week. And we'll take a call over there as to how things go.
One more thing what the governor said was that even if I reduce CRR by 25 bips, the transmission will be only between 2 to 5 basis points. So that was another reason why CRR cut was not undertaken.
Sir, एक थोड़ा सा different question. Next month, government is going to complete 1 year. Looking at most of the things that government did, specifically PMJDY scheme, or they're talking about financial inclusion. If I allow me to ask you, how has been your evaluation for government?
I think a lot of good measures have been taken, but since there was, you can say, policy paralysis for almost 1 year before this government took over. So that is why we have seen that these measures will take some time. They are taking some time. But we have certainly seen some positive movements. We have seen that green shoots are visible now, and we have seen the working capital demand going up. A lot of new projects have also started coming, and there is a demand from MSME, agriculture and all. So we hope that the year 2015-16 should be much better, and the measures taken by the government will be, you can say, the impact will be reflected in the current year.
So this...
No, there was no discussion on this.
So Governor had said about that bankers have demanded banks to cross-hold long-term bonds. The reason these bonds were earlier issued and RBI had not allowed banks to cross-hold each other's bond. You said that it will help in deepening the market. At any conference you talk about on corporate bond market deepening, there is discussion on getting long-term money, be it from pensions and insurers. And it's always said that the Indian bond market is dominated by financial institutions. Then why such demand? Why can't we get more money from pensions and insurers?
That is also being taken up whenever we discuss with the government.
But what was the rationale behind asking RBI to allow investing in long-term bonds by banks?
I don't think we asked for it.
We didn't ask for it. It is a part of policy.
Governor had mentioned that.
What is the impact if you hold each other's bonds? Does it make a difference to you? No. What about the rupee bonds, ma'am? They've allowed corporates to go ahead and borrow in rupee terms now overseas, which could, to a lot of corporates, come as a big relief because the dollar borrowing has been a worrying factor for the government and talked about the hedging risks as well, ma'am. How do you see that changing for corporates? Does that impact borrowing here as well? Because a lot of the frontline corporates, at least, who would be able to access the foreign markets in rupee bond terms, how do you see that working out?
I think as far as the entire financial markets is concerned, it's a very positive move because you are one, enabling people to raise funds in rupees and not really carry risk, and on the other hand, investors who were otherwise wanting to put in money in India, they also carry the risk themselves then in rupee vis-a-vis dollars. So I think it's a good move for the economy.
But does it dampen your outlook for corporate credit growth in India? Because if you're looking at people who would be coming into the market in terms of banking loans.
When you look at corporate credit growth, actually, as the economy picks up, the credit should grow 2 to 2.5 times the GDP growth rate. And I think that kind of growth rate, there's enough for the banks to do as well as enough for various other sources of funding to come into play. So I don't think one should worry about that. One should actually just hope for the entire credit growth to pick up, and actually there is need for various forms of funding to come.
But on the other hand, do you expect this product to work? I mean, how would be the response? Because you are present overseas, you would know that market, whether there is an appetite.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yes, there is a lot of demand.
Otherwise, you won't have so much of demand coming
Yes.
in for the G6. No? There is a demand, and there are people who are willing to come into rupees as well. So I don't think there is a lack of demand. It's a question of their assessing the credibility of that particular institution. So obviously, it will be meant for only the top tier players. It couldn't be for everybody. And if when you have even seen that, you know, the corporate bond also, after the GSEC limit got filled up, all of those corporates which are considered proxies, even their corporate bonds got taken at pretty good pricing. So obviously there is a lot of demand. I don't think there is any lack of demand. In respect of, you know, this banks being allowed this cross-holding in long-term infra bonds, probably one of the reasons could be, you know, that they just want to increase the number of players, because the amount of infra bonds that have been raised have not been too many, which again I don't think is on account of the fact that people don't want to raise it. It's because the offtake, the credit offtake has been poor. Once the credit offtake comes back in, you will be seeing many more banks raising infra bonds. And probably at that point of time, it makes sense to have as many players there as possible. So if you take out all of the banks, you're taking out a major segment of players in the bond market. So probably that is the only reason why this has been allowed. Because in any case, this is a new product. It will take time to sort of find its place and put up roots. So to that extent, you know, it makes sense to allow the banks also to play in it.
मिस्टर भसीन, सुबह प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में ये भी बात हुई थी कि आपके सारे क्लाइंट्स को फॉरेक्स हेजिंग करने के लिए आरबीआई ने काफ़ी वक्त से कहा है और आप लोग एक्शन ले रहे हैं. तो गवर्नर साहब का जो पॉइंट था कि जब वो बेट सही पड़ती है तो फ़ायदा क्लाइंट का होता है, जब वो गलत पड़ते हैं तो आपके पास रिस्ट्रक्चरिंग कराने आते हैं. तो हमने कहा, यानी आरबीआई ने बैंक से कहा है कि आप ये इंश्योर कीजिए कि ऐसा ना हो, रिस्क प्रोमोटर के ऊपर रहे. तो इसके लिए आपने क्या किया है?
इसके लिए ये है कि जो कॉर्पोरेट्स की बैलेंस शीट है उसमें ये एसरटेन करना पड़ेगा कि उनका कितना नेचुरल हेज अवेलेबल है और कितना उनको फॉरेक्स हेज चाहिए. उसके बाद ही कोई डिसीजन लिया जा सकता है. तो वी हैव टेकन अप विद द डीएफएस आल्सो सेपरेटली एट आईबीए लेवल कि इसको जो है वो कॉर्पोरेट्स की बैलेंस शीट में एक प्रोविज़न किया जाए मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉर्पोरेट अफेयर्स के थ्रू, जिसमें वो डिक्लेयर करें कि उनका कितना फॉरेन एक्सचेंज फॉरेक्स हेजिंग चाहिए, कितना नेचुरली अवेलेबल है और कितना जो है वो बैंक्स के थ्रू लेंगे और उसमें क्या शॉर्टफॉल है. और 3 चीज़ें उसके लिए आईबीए ने गवर्नमेंट से टेकअप किया है.
देखिए, ऐसा है कि आज भी हम लोग ये करते हैं. ये किस बेसिस पे करते हैं? उनके बैलेंस शीट पे जो नंबर्स आते हैं, अगर वहां से मिले तो अच्छा है, नहीं तो उनके डिक्लेरेशन के बेसिस पे हम लोग करते हैं. ये जो बैलेंस शीट में नंबर आना, ये मैंडेटरी नहीं है. आज के दिन में जो हमारा अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड्स है, इट डज नॉट मैंडेट कि दिस नंबर हैज टू बी रिवील्ड इन द बैलेंस शीट. तो हम लोग जो बैंक्स की तरफ से किए हैं, हम लोग बोले हैं कि अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड में इसको मैंडेटरी बनाइए, ताकि हम लोग को खाली डिक्लेरेशन पे ना जाना पड़े, हम लोग को एक्चुअली ऑडिटेड फिगर्स के नंबर पर हम लोग काम कर पाए. तो हमारे लिए ये आसान होगा. नहीं तो आज के दिन में भी हम लोग यही काम कर रहे हैं, लेकिन डिक्लेरेशन के बेसिस पे कर रहे हैं.